Welcome to This Explainer by Forge College. In our last lesson, we were really deep in the weeds, getting our hands dirty, diagnosing and debugging RPC failures. We set up structured debug reports, captured request IDs, and basically learned exactly how to spot the bugs. But what happens when you're no longer in a cozy, controlled development environment? What happens when a live RPC node starts throwing errors and real users are actually being impacted? Well, you can't just pause the world to debug. You need a rock-solid operational playbook. So today, we're transitioning from diagnosing bugs to handling live errors in real time. Okay, let's dive into this and see how we synthesize everything we know into a rapid response strategy.
All right, here's our blueprint for today. We'll start by moving from chaos to a playbook, introduce the 3-band checklist, walk through the exact incident response workflow, and then defeat some common failure modes. Finally, we'll pack all of that into a one-page runbook and wrap things up with postmortems.
Section 1. From Chaos to Playbook. The 3 a.m. alert.
Picture this. You're sound asleep, dreaming about perfectly optimized code, when suddenly your phone just starts screaming. It's an automated server alert. The primary RPC node is failing. Now, in that exact moment, panic is the default reaction. When the clock is ticking and the adrenaline is pumping, human beings are notoriously terrible at making complex analytical decisions. And this illustrates exactly what we want to avoid. Look on the left. The unprepared operator is sweating, making wild guesses based on gut feelings, and honestly, probably making the outage worse. But on the right, the prepared operator is calm. They're relying on a cold, calculated playbook that literally makes decisions for you when you're in absolutely no condition to make them yourself.
Section 2. The 3-band checklist. This is your emergency mental model. Let's look at how this flows. I want you to think of it kind of like a firefighter protocol. Band 1 is detection. You check the telemetry, you see the smoke. Band 2 is containment. You grab the fire extinguisher and try to stop that fire from spreading. And Band 3 is recovery and escalation. That's when you call the fire department to put out the blaze completely and investigate the cause. By keeping these decisions strictly sequential, you drastically reduce your cognitive load during a crisis. I mean, you don't try to find the root cause of the fire while the kitchen is still actively burning, right?
Now, what's really interesting about this next slide is our specific definition of containment. Containment actions must be 2 things: fast, and honestly, most importantly, incredibly easy to roll back. If you reroute traffic to a backup node, you need a one-line command to flip it right back if things somehow get worse. Your goal here isn't to fix the underlying bug. Your goal is to reduce the blast radius, meaning limit how many users are actually affected and stop the bleeding while preserving evidence for the developers later.
Section 3. The incident response workflow. Step-by-step triage.
So what are the exact steps an operator should take the moment the system detects an anomaly? Step 1 is absolutely always confirming the detection signal. We never ever want to act on ambiguous subjective judgments like, hey, the app feels kind of slow, or these logs look bad. No, we start with hard, quantifiable evidence. Is the 5xx error rate above 3% for over a minute? Did the P95 latency cross 1.2 seconds? We gather our artifacts, things like request IDs, latency histograms, and if anything is missing, we identify exactly what it is before we proceed. Okay, this is crucial. Once you have your evidence, you apply containment actions, but you absolutely must use an observation window. This is a short 30 to 60-second period where you literally sit on your hands and just watch the metrics. Why? Because if you turn 5 different knobs at the exact same time and the system suddenly recovers, you have no idea which action actually worked. Or worse, if it crashes even harder, you don't know which action caused the crash. Apply one containment action, wait out the observation window, verify the impact, and only then try the next thing.
Now, if your containment actions just aren't working, it's time for Band 3, escalation. But you don't just wake up the senior engineer and yell, "It's broken." Instead, you hand them this exact escalation evidence bundle. Look at this list: request IDs, raw JSON-RPC responses, timestamped latency histograms, node logs, and recent deployment IDs. When you hand this neat, organized package over, the infrastructure or protocol team can immediately start fixing the problem without having to redo all of your diagnostic work. It's a real game changer for team efficiency.
Moving on to Section 4. Common failure modes defeating the 4 monsters.
If you're building on a network like Solana, there are 4 common Web3 monsters that will inevitably attack your API. Think of this as your cheat sheet, mapping the failure mode straight to the immediate containment action. First monster, timeouts. The signal is a spike in P95 latency. Your action, enable your retry window and fail over to a lower latency node.
Second monster, malformed responses. The signal is parsing errors. Action, black hole the offending endpoint and route to a verified replica. Third is rate limiting. The signal is 429 errors. Your action here is to throttle non-essential requests and use exponential backoff. And finally, consensus lag. The signal is slot lag or missed confirmations. The action, redirect read queries to an up-to-date replica and entirely disable writes. Notice how every single action here is precise, targeted, and highly reversible.
Section 5. The one-page runbook. A concrete example. It is finally time to pack all of this theory into a single, highly scannable piece of paper for a hypothetical primary RPC node outage. Let's assume your monitoring alerts are just screaming about 5xx JSON-RPC errors. Here is how your playbook starts with the detection phase. Notice the absolute clarity here. It says verify 5xx error rate is greater than 3% sustained for 1 minute. It doesn't say check if errors are high. It gives a concrete threshold. Then collect 3 request IDs, not some IDs, exactly 3. Finally, run a quick HTTP GET health check. If you hand this to an intern at 3 a.m., they know exactly what to do without needing any prior context.
Once detection is confirmed, we immediately move to containment, and we order these from least invasive to most invasive. Step 1. Enable client-side jittered retries for it-opponent calls, meaning requests that can be safely repeated without causing weird duplicate transactions. Then, wait for your observation window. Didn't work? Okay, step 2. Failover routing to read replica B. Still broken? Step 3. Reduce your concurrency limits to, say, 10 connections. This acts as a circuit breaker. And if the house is literally still on fire, step 4. Disable your non-critical background cron jobs that are just hoarding all your RPC connections. It's methodical, it's safe, and most importantly, it stops the operator from randomly guessing.
Finally, Section 6, Postmortems, closing the loop. Okay, the fire is out, the service is restored, and your heart rate is finally back to normal. But your job isn't quite done yet. We need to close the loop so this never happens exactly the same way again. Enter your post-incident checklist. First, preserve your logs before they automatically get overwritten. Second, go back to your incident ticket and annotate exactly which mitigations worked and which ones failed. And third, schedule a 30-minute blameless postmortem within 72 hours. That word blameless is absolutely key here. The goal isn't to figure out whose fault the outage was. The goal is to figure out exactly where the system failed, update your one-page playbook with some new tactics, and ensure the entire team actually learns from it.
If there is a golden rule of on-call incident response, it is definitely this. Prefer reversible containment actions and validate their effect quickly. Please don't try to be a hero and rewrite production code on the fly. Just contain the blast radius, make sure you can undo your actions, watch the metrics, and hand over a pristine evidence bundle to the experts. I'll leave you with this provocative thought. When you're writing these emergency playbooks, you're actually making really crucial decisions about temporary throttling and endpoint failovers. So how will these emergency containment actions ultimately shape your permanent API policy and rate limiting rules? Well, that is exactly what we'll be exploring in our next module on cores and rate limiting strategies. Remember, true mastery of Web3 development comes from structured, continued learning. I highly encourage you to visit forge.college to dive deeper into the subject and explore our extensive library of Web3 engineering programs and resources. Thanks so much for watching this explainer, and keep building.